I am using painter's tape to tape down my paper. And the paper I'm using is the Blick drawing paper. It's their 80-pound paper. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to set up a grid journal with 6 different little squares. And I've cut me a piece of 3x3 using watercolor paper. And I'm just using a pencil and eyeing it. I'm not measuring. I'm just going to put 6 squares. I started in the center there, just kind of eyeing it to make sure it's a little bit even, but it's not perfect or measured by any means, and that's fine. I just want to get 6 squares in and work on 6 at a time. So I've put some white down, and I'm just using a little piece of watercolor paper to move it around. And now I'm taking, this is a Liquitex Light Blue Permanent. Just putting a little bit on, and then I've got it on that paper towel, and I'm just kind of moving it around, just thinking sky, and just throwing that on. I was really motivated this week to just play with some landscapes. Every time we're in the mountains, the views are just beautiful. So here I'm just taking a piece of copy paper and I'm just rubbing it on, and what it does, it pulls off a little but leaves some. It kind of leaves a texture. I'm taking a Nova Color Cad Yellow now, putting a little bit on a piece of watercolor paper, and I'm just moving it around. Just another way to add paint without using, the normal brush. I love using different ways because you can't really control it, and you get some interesting marks. And it's also fun working on 6 at a time because you don't really have time to think about it. And so you just kind of dib and dab and stay loose. This is Americana Citron Green. It's actually a craft paint that I love. As you know, the craft paints have less pigment, but sometimes I like that. So I'm just adding it to this piece of paper and just smashing it on. And again, it just gives a different look. So I'm just trying to use different ways to get the paint on the paper. So for the sky, I used paper towel. For the yellow, I used a little piece of watercolor paper. And now I am just putting paint on that piece of copy paper and pressing it down. I think that's making a really interesting mark. Now I know I want to go a little darker at the bottom, so I've pulled out my Grumbacher Sap Green, and I've grabbed a paper towel again, and I'm just kind of moving that around. The paint got a little dry, so I wet the paper towel, and you can see it'll start moving it a little better. So I just kind of move it till I like it, and now I'm taking a pencil. This is a really cool technique. If I scribble and drag it through that paint, it actually puts that on the tip of my pencil and gives me some cool green marks. I'm going to do that again. Now I'm just taking the pencil and kind of letting it, I'm holding it at the end and kind of letting it twirl, spin, and I'm just hitting, I was hitting the, just where I can see the landscape. So again, I'm just scribbling in. And then I'm just going to twirl it right where I see the marks. And yeah, I think that gives it a really cool landscape effect. There I put a little bit on, and now I'm just pulling the pencil back and forth. Yeah, like I said, it's fun working on 6 at one time. I just circled what seemed to me to look like the sun on that bottom left. I remember noticing that and thinking, wow, that looks like a sunrise or a sunset. So I'm still just moving that green around, and where I see that I want to blend or add a little more green, just moving that around. And there I see another sun. I think I'm going to circle kind of where I see the sun in each of them. It was interesting because each one of them kind of had a spot that looked like the sun. That one had a little sun. That bottom middle one had a tiny little circle. But yeah, so I was really pleased with that. It was fast. I'm going to show you a little bit closer up, and you can see all the marks, all the scratch marks, the way each thing applied the paint differently. And I found that a really fun way to work quickly and on 6 at a time. So I'm going to do another one, and this time I'm starting with the Blick Matte Blue, and it's I'm just going to use my finger and put a little dot in, and then I just kind of move it around with my finger, thinking sky, thinking clouds. Always fun to finger paint. And I love it because you just never know what you're going to get. So real simple sky. And now I'm going to take my little jelly plate, and I'm putting a Craft Smart Light Yellow on it. Since that's a craft paint, it does not have much pigment, but that's what I wanted. And I just kind of wanted almost a white. I love where the yellow hits the blue, and it's kind of making an interesting mark where it's overlapping the blue. So I'm just going to do that for each one of them. Now I've got my Craft Smart Spanish Olive, and I've watered it down so you can see it's a very transparent and not much pigment, but I just wanted just a little bit of green right there. And I actually love them right there. I love just the blue, the yellow, and the green. Now I'm taking my pencil and just kind of loosely making horizontal marks, kind of letting the pencil go where it wants to go. And now I'm going to take Liquitex Hooker's Green. It's more of a grass green. And like I have said before, I like mixing colors, but sometimes if I'm working quick and just drinking my coffee and want to do something fast and loose, just using the paints as they are is fun because there's some beautiful colors. So I put those greens down and now I'm just scribbling in. And now I used a piece of that copy paper to kind of pick up a little bit of it. I'm going to put that green down on the jelly plate here and press it in, and it makes a really cool mark. I love that. And then I'm cleaning up that little edge. Most of the time I don't mind if it gets out of the edge, but I just felt like cleaning that up a little bit, and now I'm putting more pencil mark in. Again, just using the jelly plate and adding a little bit darker green. Oh, isn't that cool? That looks like hills. Then I'm just going to put a line in with the brush and then just kind of wave it at the top to make kind of hills or distant mountains. Making kind of a hill shape on the jelly plate, pressing that down. It makes a really cool mark, but I end up smoothing it out. I like the mark it makes. Then I take the pencil and scratch and scrape and move that around, kind of give it that foreground some texture. Now I've got a yellow China marker and I'm just going in. The paint's still wet. Well, it dries fast, so some of it's probably dry, but some of it's wet, and the China marker just goes right over it and makes cool marks. So I'm just going to hit each one with that yellow. Love the yellow against the blue and over the green. Now I've got a Prismacolor pencil. I'm just going to go in again and make some marks. Just lots of layers. Just whatever comes to mind, whatever I've got sitting close by. Now what I'm going to do is I've got that citron green. I'm going to put a little blob and then I'm just going to pull it with that watercolor paper, just pulling it right across. Again, just one more layer. Seems like the more layers, the better. It just gets richer and richer. And it pulls over on that green so pretty. Sometimes I pull it over the green. Sometimes I just put it right on top of the green, or right above the green, I should say. Now I'm using my Grumbacher sap green. I know I want it a little darker at the bottom, and I'm using the brush and just kind of brushing that on. Here I've watered it down a little bit. I just wanted a glaze. I can put that on real thick because it's a Grumbacher paint and it'll be dark. But there I watered it down a little bit. And now I'm taking my Pentel oil pastels and just going to make some marks. I've got the yellow out, doing another coat of yellow. So I had yellow paint, and then I put yellow China marker, and then more yellow paint, and now yellow oil pastel. And here I'm just knocking out some of that blue I didn't like, just reshaping that a little bit and adding a little white right along the edge of the greens to make it really stand out with a value change. So I'm just touching some of the yellow. See right there where when I paint around that green, it really made that pop. And I'm moving fast, doing 6 at a time. I don't have a ton of time to think about it. I'm just reacting and using what I've got. A little bit more white right there. I always love a little white in a painting. You see that top middle one kind of has a square cloud. I'm going to reshape that a little bit. Although sometimes when I'm looking at clouds, I'm thinking there might be like a square one up there. I'm thinking that wouldn't look natural in a painting. But sometimes they are, but that one I kind of straighten up a little bit. Or I should say make it look more cloud-like. Now I've got another oil pastel, and I'm just kind of putting one more layer into the grass. Yeah, you can just keep going. I mean, I could have done a lot more to these, but like I said, I wanted to kind of go quick and do 6 at a time, and I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can see all the marks. But they're really fun. I hope you try it, and I appreciate you watching this week. And I will see you next time.